Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Week number 11 in the National Football League, here to recap it all. And it seems like I'm saying this a lot. There seems to be a theme of week 11, family business. This time, the NFC South variety as the Atlanta Falcons travel to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what was supposed to be, at least when we looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season, supposed to be an easy win for the Atlanta Falcons. But, as we've seen this season unfold and transpire, not so much. In fact, this is a bad Atlanta Falcons football team. So much so that I expected Tampa Bay to win this game. Now, again, did I see them winning this game as handily as they did? No, I didn't. But I expected them to win nonetheless. I talked about the Texans on a prior video for this week in week 11 and how they've fallen from the ranks of the elite. But not only did they fall from the ranks of the elite, they fell from the ranks of the respectable. The Texans are on an 8-game losing streak, and they're a bad football team. Well, I said that they were akin to the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons themselves find themselves in that same kind of predicament. They're 2-7 or 3-7 or 3-6 going into this game, whatever it is. It's bad, and they're not a good football team. And I hear people calling for not Mike Smith's head or his job, but they're starting to call him into question as to whether this team has quit on him and if he needs to be reevaluated in this offseason to see if he needs to remain as the head coach in Atlanta. And I think that's hogwash. I mean, this guy has done nothing but win since he's been in Atlanta, and you've got to give him more than a season that is just terrible to fix this thing. Whatever's wrong, and I can't really pinpoint it. Everybody wants to point to injuries. Everybody's got injuries. And yes, so Roddy White was banged up for the majority of the season. And so Julio Jones, probably your best receiver, arguably 1A, 1B. Both of those guys were banged up for a majority of the time, and Julio's gone for the season. And Steven Jackson, your prized possession in the offseason, he came into the season and he got banged up right away. And Sean Witherspoon went down. And look, you see where I'm going with this. Yeah, you were banged up. So are a lot of other teams in the league, and you don't hear everyone else using those excuses. So this team, put it this way, this team was bad before Julio Jones went down. This team was already on a downward trend and spiral before Sean Witherspoon went down, before they started to have this rash of injuries that decimated them at key positions. They were already bad. Their offensive line stunk when the season started. In the preseason, you saw that this was going to be a problem. When they released Tyson Clabo and they said, Andre, hey, Holmes, you're up, you knew that this was going to be some serious problems. I think his name is Lamar Holmes. I think I called him Andre Holmes. Lamar Holmes was going to be your right tackle. And then you had injuries to Sam Baker, and they had to move Holmes over to left tackle, which he stunk at right tackle, and you move him to left. And then you got to slide in Jeremy Trueblood, who absolutely is atrocious, to right tackle. You knew the Falcons were having issues on the offensive line. But this was the big kicker here. You let John Abraham walk, a double-digit sack. And I'm not letting this go. And I've talked about this at least 3 times this season, and I'm still harping on this. You let John Abraham walk away as if you had it like that. Now you can't get pressure to save your life, and you traded him in for Osi Umenyiora. It'd be one thing if you said, okay, John Abraham, you're 33, 34 years old. You're no spring chicken. Let's trade you in for a young, talented, prime of his career defensive end in free agency. It'd be one thing if you did that. But to trade him off for another aging veteran defensive end in Osi Umenyiora, one that is not as productive as John Abraham is, didn't see the logic there. And look what John Abraham is doing in Arizona, balling. Look what Osi Umenyiora is doing, yawning in Atlanta. And you guys can't get pressure on the quarterback. So teams are gashing you through the air because you're not getting pressure. And they can run the football on you too because you have always been very soft up the middle. You've always been a light defense in the pants. Now you can't get pressure to match, and so that's even worse. And so this Falcons team has struggled. You look at this game, and I'm not going to sit here and keep you here longer than you need to be. Don't have the big board here. Don't need it. This was total domination on the part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Gerald McCoy and company sacked and harassed Matt Ryan all game long. I think McCoy had 3 sacks, or at least 2.5 by the end of the first quarter or so. I mean, he was dominating. They were dominating that offensive line in Atlanta. And you look at what they were able to do running the football. Bobby Rainey had a coming out party. And it seems like these days, the last 3 weeks, no matter who the back is, whether it's Mike James, Rainey, or it's whoever, they're running the football. And they're running it effectively for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Doesn't matter who's in at running back. Brian Leonard, doesn't matter. They're getting holes and they're taking advantage of them. And it was Bobby Rainey's turn, and he did not disappoint. He went off in this game. They just couldn't contain Vincent Jackson either. Mike Glennon Longneck went to work on the Atlanta Falcons defense. The special teams got involved. They blocked a punt. Mason Foster catches a pick, takes it to the house. You name it, it happened for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had fun. And this is what winning can do for you. You win one game. Just one. This was an 0-8 football team 2 weeks ago. They beat Miami, and all of a sudden now they've got confidence, a little bit of pep and swagger in their step. And here comes the lowly Atlanta Falcons to town. And the Buccaneers feel like, we're supposed to beat these guys. They stink. Let's take care of them. And let's take this trash outside and dispose of it. And that's what they did. They dominated this game from start to finish. Before you looked up, the score was 20-3. You looked up again, the score was 13-41. I mean, they were dominating in this game. And they dominated from start to finish. They had fun offensively. They had fun defensively. And special teams got involved as well. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, from start to finish, a dominating performance. And I told you a couple of weeks ago, this team has not and obviously will not quit on Greg Schiano. You say what you want about him, and I've been one of those saying that he's going to be fired at the end of the season. And I still think there's a chance that he might not be retained. But if he continues to play and has his team playing like this, and I said this last week when they won, I feel like they were going to win against Atlanta. And I said, if they can finish this season strong, whether it's 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, 2 out of 3, to finish up this season, they just got 2 wins in a row. Let's say they drop the next 2 and then they win the last 4 out of 5. Or they win the last 3 out of 4. Let's say that they finish this season 5-11. I think that's enough for him to keep his job in Tampa Bay. And we saw this happen last year with Ron Rivera. He was on the brink of being fired in Carolina. They go on a streak where they win their last 4 games. They did not quit on Ron Rivera. They won 4 in a row, salvaged the season, and salvaged the job of Ron Rivera. The Buccaneers have a chance to do that same thing for their head coach in Greg Schiano. What once seemed like a lost season that was going to result in a 1-15, 2-14, 3-13 at best record for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now looks like it could easily be 4-12, 5-11, maybe even 6-10, depending on the opponents that they have, where those games are, and how good these Buccaneers are playing football down the stretch. Again, this season is about evaluation for the Buccaneers. Is Mike Glennon your guy at the quarterback position? Who of these offensive linemen are you going to keep around? What about this defensive line? You're starting to mix guys around at the linebacker position. Can Jonathan Banks play at that cornerback position? Is he a good member of this secondary? You're finding all of these things out, and you're finding a good stable of backs. Even when Doug Martin comes back, Doug E. Frosh comes back, you still feel good about Mike James. You still feel good about Mr. Rainey, and you still got other guys that you feel like can contribute. What about your receiving corps? A lot of guys in here mixing and matching these pieces around. You're finding out who can I trust in the absence of Mike Williams, who can't I trust? So a lot of things you're figuring out here in Tampa Bay, and it feels good if you're a Buccaneers fan. That's 2 in a row. If you're the Falcons, what a train wreck this season is. This is a nightmare that you can't wait to wake up from. You're just waiting for somebody to just come and tap you on the shoulder and wake up, and you just wake up like, what a bad dream. But it's not over yet. Your nightmare still has 6 weeks left in it. So if I were you, I don't know what to say. I really don't know where you go from here. This is just tough to watch. It's tough to take if you're a Falcons fan because this is a long fall from grace. I mean, we're talking about a team that was a quarter, a play, a game away from the Super Bowl a season ago, and to go from there to this catastrophic fall. I really don't know where to place the blame. I don't know how you start to point the finger, and I don't know where you put it. Mike Smith isn't getting the job done, but I just don't know. And the bad thing is you've mortgaged your future to win now. You give away trade picks to get Julio Jones, and so you can't really just say, oh yeah, I'm building this thing for the future because you don't have picks in those first couple of rounds to really ensure that you're getting top-notch quality players, and then you traded picks away, and see, that's the trickle-down domino effect. You had to trade away picks for the future drafts to get back into the first round to get guys this year, or in the 2013 draft. So it's just bad in Atlanta right now. It's just really bad. And the good thing is all of the guys that you won with last year, for the most part, going to be around come next year, probably with the exception of Tony Gonzalez, who will finally hang it up after this abysmal season that he didn't sign up for. He'll probably be done. And that's going to be a huge blow to your offense. But if you're the Falcons, can't get much worse than this. So whatever happens, happens. And you just got to move on from it. But this is a bad loss on the road to a 1-8 Tampa Bay team. You're not much better, but you probably felt like, hey, at least we're not as bad as them. A couple of weeks ago, you were stinking it up, but at least you could look down in the standings and say, hey, at least we're not those guys. And those guys being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, you got to look across and say, hey, we're those guys. And soon, you'll probably be looking up and saying, damn, what happened to those guys? They used to be down there. That's what happens in the National Football League when you stink and teams are being progressively better each and every single week. And you're still stuck in the same rut. You're still living off what you were able to accomplish last season. Nobody cares. And your record states that very, very clearly. So that's going to do it for this edition of In the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. Buccaneers get it done. They go to 2-8 on the season. Falcons fall. I don't even know their record is that bad. Let's call them 3-7. Let's call them 3-7. They could easily be 2-8. I think they're 3-7. This is a bad football team in Atlanta. Yikes. Man, them and the Texans. I don't know who's worse. I think I'd have to say the Falcons at this point. But, again, you can take some solace in this season by telling yourself that, hey, if we get healthy, we get some of our stuff back, this is the same nucleus, the same group that took us to 13-3 and 1 game away from the Super Bowl. We can get back to that. We just had some injuries. If that's what you got to tell yourself to make you feel better, I say, hey, sing that song all the way till next year. Maybe you'll be able to climb back on your horse and give it a go in 2014 because this campaign is over. And so that'll do it for this installment of In the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. That happens in the National Football League, whether big or small. We cover it all here in the Lab Room. Thank you for joining me as I continue to break down week number 11 in the National Football League. Come back. I've got plenty more games to break down in week number 11 of the National Football League.